This is my Motocaddy S3 Pro 2015 vintage. Over the last couple of months the gearbox has been starting to make a noise under load. So as I refurbished the lithium battery last year by replacing the 40 cells in it, I decided that I wouldn't replace the trolley. I would then purchase a new gearbox and axle and refurbish it that way. There are no videos on YouTube on doing this exercise, so what I've done is bought the new gearbox and axle, and you can see here we have the gearbox with the counter lead, and put it on the background so we can see better. There we go. Looking at it, there are only so many fixed attachments. There are 2 screw holes on this end of the axle, 2 on that end of the axle. There's 3 motor fixings, 1, 2, 3, and the gearbox to frame fixing, which is this pin. Now what is totally different is the method of attaching it to the wishbone, where on this you have a spigot. On here we have a bracket, so there must be some sort of screw in this axle fixing that screws into the bracket to hold it in place. So that is the unknown at the moment, and what I'll do, I'll stop the video now and delve in deeper. What I have done is removed the motor and left it plugged in. I've unscrewed the connector lead and detached the motor, taken the rear bracket off the gearbox, which is 1 long pin, and unscrewed the 4 screws out of there. So the next thing is to try and detach the brackets. So we'll have a go at that and see what happens. On closer inspection, it looks as though these brackets are part of this frame assembly that stays on the trolley, so the location peg on this axle bearing assembly must just slot in, so the axle somehow must lift off, or it doesn't, so there must be something else holding it. Having detached the wishbones from the actual brackets, we can now see a hidden screw in the bottom of the bracket. So in there. So I just need to undo both, and hopefully the axle will just fall away now. Yeah, we've got a small Phillips screw which I'm undoing, partly undone there, and we can see the axle starting to separate from the bracket. Okay, right, so all the screws are removed. I've removed the 2 bracket screws finally, and hopefully now the gearbox should pull straight out. Yep, you can see there's where the spigot on the axle relocates into there. So assembly should be just the same as dismantling. Before putting the motor in, I've reconnected the gearbox and counter sensor. Just changed my mind on the reassembly method. When I came to fit the motor into the gearbox. I wasn't sure that I got the seal seated correctly, so I think it's best to, before you fit the axle back, to mount the motor to the gearbox, ensuring the seal isn't clamped or distorted anywhere. So that's now done. I've tightened all the bolts onto the motor from the gearbox, so I'm going to just fit the axle now back onto the frame. Okay, so we're all complete underneath. Cables, gearbox counter cable is reconnected. Axle screws are tight. Oh, I've forgotten the gearbox fixing. Yep, now we're all complete, so now I can turn it over and refit the hidden screws into those two spigot brackets. Now the two spigot screws have been tightened up, I can now go and reassemble the wishbone. Just as an aside, I've taken the gearbox, the old gearbox apart, just looking where the noise is coming from. You can see that the crown wheel, which you would call it, that mates with the motor, is really well worn. There's very little tooth left. I can imagine that tooth being originally 3 or 4 mil higher than that. So just about time to replace, I think. Right.